A violent torrent of water explodes over a lone schoolgirl. She stands drenched in a bathroom stall, a tipped bucket nearby. A caption explains this is a common, everyday occurrence for her. Outside, her bullies mock her, asking if it is raining. The ringleader, Ms. Ochi, calls her a gloomy Nakura and summons her. She grabs a fistful of hair. The girl is Kirishima Hikaru, 16. Mizuochi yanks her head back cruelly, demanding that she speak. She proudly declares to her friends that Hikaru is her personal dog. Hikaru's inner thought identifies her tormentor by name, Mizuochi. The bully's voice is a hollow, empty sound in Hikaru's mind. Hikaru stares forward, her eyes wide with a haunted expression. She has always chosen to ignore the constant abuse. She doesn't want to retaliate, keeping something deep inside sealed. Though bullied for years, she has never once fought back. Deep in her heart, the door to retaliation is chained shut. The bullies laugh amongst themselves, deciding to leave. Another girl's voice hesitantly calls out from the side. She suggests to Hikaru that this kind of thing should stop. Mizuochi turns, her amused expression hardening into a scowl. She dares the girl to repeat what she just said. The other girls watch as Hikaru looks on, surprised by the intervention. The kind girl begins to repeat her sentiment about the bullying. Mizuochi explodes with rage, screaming that she can't hear her. She grabs the girl's collar and violently shoves her backward. Hikaru's eye widens in absolute shock and horror. The girl lies unconscious, her eyes wide and unseeing. Mizuochi's friends now stare in stunned, fearful silence. Hikaru feels her own consciousness beginning to slip away. As darkness closes in, she wonders if this is death. In the void, a single word echoes, scary. A bright light emerges from the absolute blackness. Her eye opens, questioning what is happening to her. She awakens on a stone floor, chained in a dungeon cell. Sitting up, she asks aloud what this place could possibly be. She examines the heavy iron shackles binding her wrists. Touching the collar on her neck, she sees the number 100. A guard in full-plate armor approaches, holding a bucket. He gruffly asks if she has finally regained consciousness. Another imposing, fully armored guard stands watch nearby. Hikaru, still chained, wonders who these strange people are. The guard sighs, saying he brought the water just for this. She notes his fantasy-like outfit, trying to make sense of it. He throws the cold water directly into her face. Drenched again, he tells her to wake up and come with him. As he pulls her along, she is shocked to understand his words. She tries to analyze his motives, searching for a clue. She realizes he is ignoring her existence as a person. He is simply herding her forward like an animal. The guard points to a huge door, ordering her to open it. A deafening roar from beyond makes her sweat with fear. Peeking through the door, she is blinded by a brilliant light. She stands in the gateway, bathed in the light of the arena. Her eye widens as she beholds the incredible scene before her. She has emerged into a vast and crowded coliseum. The arena is colossal, packed with a roaring, jeering crowd. She whispers the word Colosseum in utter disbelief. Spectators scream for blood, chanting for the fighters to kill. One man furiously yells that he has money riding on this. The fight is between the leaders of two small, warring nations. The prince and princess, who are engaged, must fight to the death. The prince, Albert, fights with a look of pure anguish. The loser's nation will be enslaved, a truly cruel condition. The two lovers clash swords in a desperate, deadly dance. Albert lets out a fierce cry as he presses his attack. He ducks under a swing, preparing his own counter. The princess, Mina, continues her relentless, skillful assault. Albert grits his teeth, his face spattered with grime and blood. With a final, desperate motion, he brings his sword down. The blade finds its mark with a sickening, solid impact. Mina's eyes widen in shock as the sword pierces her armor. Albert's eye reflects the horror of what he has just done. Blood erupts from the fatal wound in a dark spray. Albert is splattered with the blood of his beloved fiancée. She collapses to her knees, her own sword falling to the sand. His eye is wide, a tiny pupil in a sea of disbelief. He rushes to her side as she lies dying on the arena floor. Mina weakly tells him that he is as strong as she expected. Albert can only whisper her name, his voice choked with grief. She tells him he must do what is right for his people. With her last breath, she apologizes to everyone. He cradles her lifeless body, his face a mask of sorrow. He lets out a gut-wrenching scream of pure, unfiltered anguish. His cry of grief echoes across the blood-soaked arena. The crowd, however, erupts into ecstatic, celebratory cheers. They revel in the brutal and tragic spectacle they just witnessed. Hikaru watches from the gate, wondering what this awful place is. A voice from behind her announces that it is now her turn. The guard yanks her by the chain, pulling her into the light. She asks what he means, and he repeats that it is her turn. He instructs her to hold out her hands to be unshackled. With a loud click, the heavy chains fall from her wrists. He tells her to enjoy herself, leaving her alone in the arena. From the gate, he points out the weapon she is to use. A small, crude knife is stuck blade first into the sand. She picks it up, realizing this is her only means of defense. A loud, grinding sound from across the arena makes her gasp. A massive, grotesque form emerges from the opposite gate. A hulking, pig-faced orc steps out from the shadows. Hikaru stares at the monster, her eyes wide with pure terror. She stands small and alone, facing the towering creature. From the shadows of an open gate, a monstrous, pig-faced orc emerges. Hikaru's eyes widen in terror. She recognizes the beast from fantasy stories. An announcer's voice echoes, introducing the girl from another world for sport. The immense size difference between the hulking orc and Hikaru is staggering. A close-up reveals the orc's face, a mask of drooling, jagged-toothed malice. Spectators in the crowd callously place bets on how long she will survive. Hikaru understands with chilling clarity that her death is the expected outcome. The orc's massive shadow falls over her as it prepares to charge. With terrifying speed, the beast lunges forward in a blur of motion. Hikaru is shocked, her eyes wide at the creature's impossible swiftness. She recalls that large animals, like bears, can be deceptively fast runners. She throws herself aside just in time, narrowly dodging the powerful charge. The orc smashes into the arena wall, but she sees it is unharmed. Realizing the beast took no damage, she desperately wonders what to do next. She glances at her small knife, knowing it's useless against such thick hide. Before she can think, the orc's massive hand lunges toward her. The hand closes around her, its grip like an iron vice, lifting her. Her face contorts in agony as she feels her body is about to break. The orc lets out a victorious, guttural laugh as it tightens its grip. The bloodthirsty crowd roars, urging the beast to crush her completely. Her vision darkens as she believes it is over, unable to move at all. A flicker of defiance returns. A familiar voice echoes in her mind. She remembers a voice she has heard since childhood, one she always hated. The orc continues to squeeze, its brutish face straining with effort. Her consciousness begins to recede into a dark, grainy abyss. In the void, she stands alone, a single point of awareness. A single tear falls as she fights against the encroaching darkness. Her thoughts scream in defiance. She absolutely refuses to die. She will not die for the sake of the bullies who enjoyed her pain. Her eyes snap open, filled with a new and terrifying resolve. The chained door in her mind opens. She knows the orc will die. The sky above the Colosseum seems to reflect her sudden, deadly decision. Held fast in the orc's grip, her entire demeanor suddenly shifts. Her eyes now burn with cold fury as she tells the pig not to get cocky. The beast looks down, momentarily confused by her fearless defiance. With a savage snarl, she opens her mouth to bite its massive thumb. The crowd laughs, mocking her futile and seemingly childish act of defiance. The orc's expression shifts to one of pain, surprise, and confusion. She sinks her teeth into its flesh, targeting the vulnerable radial artery. Her mind coldly calculates that even orcs have anatomical weaknesses. With feral force, she rips in tears at the flesh of its wrist. As blood erupts from the wound, she notes its right arm goes limp. She had anticipated its left-handed attack was merely a feint. Her cold, calculating eyes showed she knew it would counter with its right. Using the reeling creature as a foothold, she launches herself upwards. She knows that getting in close is the only way to avoid its reach. With a determined look, she recognizes this is her perfect chance. With incredible agility, she vaults onto the monstrous creature's back. Landing squarely on its shoulders, she prepares to strike its head. The reflection of her impending attack shines in the orc's terrified eye. She remarks on its beautiful eye before raising her knife to strike. The blade plunges deep into the orc's eye with a violent, sickening impact. The beast thrashes its head wildly, trying to throw her off. She clings to its back like a leech, riding out the violent convulsions. Her eyes narrow with grim focus as she prepares her next move. Using her entire body weight, she forces the knife deeper into its skull. She notes with grim satisfaction that the first stab was too shallow. The blade grinds deeper, pushing through bone and into the creature's brain. Perched atop its head, she drives the knife in with brutal, final force. She wrenches a sharp shard of bone from its shattered eye socket. Using the bone as a new weapon, she gouges out the orc's other eye. A close-up shows the now empty and grotesquely bleeding socket. She pulls the bone shard free, her face a mask of cold determination. She continues her relentless assault, stabbing the now blind and helpless beast. As the orc collapses, she finally understands why she never fought back. With a final, savage stomp, she crushes the back of its skull. The impact sends a sickening spray of gore across the arena floor. She knew that if she ever started fighting, she would kill her opponents. The entire crowd stares on in stunned, horrified silence at the carnage. Her foot lands firmly on the sand beside the massive, lifeless corpse. She stands over her kill, a blood-splattered and terrifyingly victorious figure. She finally understands that she possesses the talent for slaughter. A flashback shows her as a 5-year-old girl, standing over a dead man. A bloody pen, the apparent murder weapon, lies on the floor nearby. Two detectives realize only those present will ever know the full truth. The true, violent nature of her talent has remained a hidden secret. A wide shot shows the small victor beside her massive victim. A stylized portrait captures Hikaru, bloodied but unbowed, knife in hand. The spectators in the stands are left utterly speechless by the brutal display. The Coliseum owner, Grias McDaniel, furiously demands to know who she is. Seated on his throne, he wonders if his men brought out the wrong person. His attendants cower in silence, unsure how to answer his rage. He rants that this event is for the entertainment of powerless slaves. His advisor calmly insists to Lord McDaniel that there has been no mistake. In a distant court, attendants report on Hikaru, a girl without magic. The armored lord on the throne asks how she could kill a mighty orc. The attendant stammers, unable to provide a logical explanation. The court falls silent, awaiting the final judgment of their lord. He states with certainty that it is because she was born that way. An attendant turns in surprise as a new figure enters the throne room. The warrior Adam Falkenborg arrives, calmly telling everyone to relax. He grins, stating he is not in the mood for small fry today. Grias McDaniel nervously asks Falkenborg what business he has there. Falkenborg stands before McDaniel, offering him a single piece of advice. He demands McDaniel give Hikaru to him, or he will lose her forever. McDaniel sputters in disbelief, calling Falkenborg a complete idiot. Falkenborg simply touches his temple, insisting that he understands the situation. His shadow looms ominously as he declares that she is on their side. McDaniel's eyes widen in dawning horror as he grasps the implication. He tries to bluster, claiming he can handle one little girl himself. Adam Falkenborg turns his back, saying it makes no difference to him either way. Over his shoulder, he tells the fuming nobleman to ask himself if he's sure. Gria's McDaniel is left alone, sweating and confused by the warrior's cryptic warning. Suddenly, his eyes widen in panic as a wave of pure dread washes over him. His inner voice questions the cold sweat and the violent trembling that grips his body. He realizes with dawning horror that he might actually be afraid of that girl. He furiously rejects the thought, insisting to himself that it cannot possibly be true. His expression hardens into a mask of grim denial, silencing his inner turmoil. He whirls around and barks an order at a nearby guard, who snaps to attention. McDaniel covers his mouth, his composure shattered, still fighting his own mounting fear. The scene shifts to the dark, cold stone corridors beneath the grand throne room. A nervous blonde guard leads a chained Hikaru, telling her not to resist. He glances back at her, a bead of sweat on his temple, clearly on edge. Hikaru watches him, her eyes shown in close-up, noting that his voice is trembling. She reasons that it's natural for him to be wary. She killed a giant orc. Her thoughts continue as a shadow falls across her face. And what's more, she knows with absolute certainty that she could kill this man in an instant. But she doesn't move, sensing a deep, foreboding feeling from the collar itself. Her gaze drifts down to the small metal plate on her collar, engraved with 99. She narrows her eyes, focusing on the number and trying to decipher its meaning. A new guard appears at the end of the hall, calling out to them. He announces that the owner wishes to speak with the girl he is escorting. Hikaru's eyes widen slightly in surprise. The summons has arrived. She is led into a lavish throne room, flanked by rows of armored guards. McDaniel sits upon his throne, silently assessing the small girl brought before him. He scoffs internally, thinking that she is just a little girl, nothing to fear. With a condescending smile, he congratulates Kirishima Hikaru on her first victory. He continues his patronizing praise, calling her fight magnificent, but there is more. Hikaru, her face hidden in shadow, cuts him off, telling him to get on with it. She looks up at him, her expression impatient, and asks what he wants. McDaniel's smile falters, annoyed that she doesn't grasp the most important thing. A sinister look crosses his face as he decides to teach her place. He points a single, trembling finger toward the heavy collar around her neck. This, he explains, is a slave's collar, designed to inject lethal poison. It means she cannot escape and has no choice but to continue fighting for him. Hikaru's eyes are wide with shock as he asks if she understands her situation. McDaniel's mouth curls into a wide, sadistic grin as he repeats the question. He throws his head back and laughs, declaring that she is now his property. He screams that her very life and death are entirely at his whim. Hikaru remains utterly silent, her face obscured by the dark shadow of her hair. She stands motionless as he continues his gloating rant from his high-backed throne. McDaniel misinterprets her silence as fear, believing she has finally been broken. He calms down, patronizingly claiming he is a compassionate man who will favor her. With a dismissive wave of his hand, he declares that is all he has to say. He orders the guard to take her away, watching as she begins to leave. The blonde guard is momentarily confused by a sudden, sharp tug on the chain. In a blur of motion, Hikaru yanks the guard off balance and lunges forward. She vaults through the air, a black streak heading directly for the throne. She lands squarely in McDaniel's lap, her momentum carrying her forward with force. The guard shouts in shock, realizing she has snatched the knife from his belt. She presses the cold steel to McDaniel's throat, ordering everyone not to move. The guards are frozen with indecision, and McDaniel is paralyzed with raw terror. Hikaru stares him down, her eyes burning with cold, unwavering intensity. McDaniel, sweating profusely, asks if she didn't hear his earlier explanation. He shrieks that the collar will inject its poison and kill her instantly. Without a flicker of emotion, Hikaru looks at him and dares him to do it. The room falls silent. McDaniel is speechless, his ultimate threat rendered useless. Hikaru's eye glints with cold, calculating intelligence as she maintains her hold. She tells him that whether the poison is released is something he can control. McDaniel's eye widens in shock as he realizes she has called his bluff. She explains the collar is a mechanism, not magic, and must have rules. She tells him that in this situation, he would never dare to use it. She points out that the rule against slaves fighting outside the arena proves it. McDaniel grits his teeth in silent frustration, knowing she is absolutely right. Hikaru thinks to herself that this simple fact will be very helpful to her. She stands up from his lap, explaining she can guess the collar's secret. She declares that 100 victories will remove the collar and set her free. McDaniel's face is a mask of pure, humiliated shock at her correct deduction. His smirking advisor mockingly praises McDaniel, saying her guess was a good one. An intense, silent standoff fills the room as Hikaru calmly walks away. McDaniel's eyes are a storm of raw fury and undeniable fear. He takes a deep, ragged breath, attempting to regain his shattered composure. He remarks that her insight is impressive for someone from a lower world. He stops her at the door, offering what he calls one final piece of advice. His composure shatters again as he screams at her not to get cocky. He reminds her that slaves are strictly forbidden from killing their owners. He roars that he holds all the power and decides who and how she fights. He tells her that her pitiful life is sustained only by his grace. Hikaru pauses at the threshold, turning back slightly, her chains clinking softly. McDaniel watches her, his breath held, expecting a reaction of fear or submission. She looks over her shoulder, her voice quiet but filled with a cold promise. She tells him that once she is free, she's going to kill him. McDaniel's eyes widen in apoplectic rage, the sound of his fury filling the air. He watches in stunned silence as she is led out of the grand hall. The guards in the corridor look on, unnerved by the chilling confrontation they witnessed. An advisor approaches the trembling McDaniel, trying to calm his master down. McDaniel's face is a snarl of pure, unadulterated hatred and wounded pride. He explodes in a final roar, screaming about the insolence of a mere slave. He stands before his throne, fists clenched, breathing heavily in the now silent room. His advisors exchange nervous glances, unsure how to react to his violent outburst. Adam Falkenborg leans in the doorway, taunting McDaniel about being so worked up. He smirks, asking if the great owner is finally asking him for a favor. McDaniel, his face contorted with rage, screams at the hulking warrior to be silent. Falkenborg simply watches, unfazed by the nobleman's impotent tantrum. McDaniel accepts her challenge, daring her to try and kill him if she can. His face twists into a manic, triumphant grin at the thought of her demise. He declares that he will prepare a very special opponent for Kirishima Hikaru. A close-up shows Hikaru's determined face, the number 99 clear on her collar. A montage flashes through her mind, the orc, the blood, her own cold eyes. She reflects on the terror of death and the strange feeling of fresh blood. The sensation of taking a life was a stark, abstract feeling. Yet, her heart felt impossibly light, as if a great weight was gone. A guard's gruff voice summoned her from her cell once more. He announced that it was time for her next match to begin. The guard noted she seemed like a completely different person from yesterday. A cold, hard resolve now glinted in her dark eyes. The announcer heralded the shocking debutante, the girl from the lower world. He roared her name, Kirishima Hikaru, for the eager crowd. A rack of deadly weapons was presented for her to choose from. Long swords, axes, and flails offered a variety of killing instruments. Strangely, the names of every weapon came to her mind effortlessly. Her talent for slaughter was unlocking knowledge she never knew she had. She ignored the grand arsenal, reaching for a familiar, simple blade. She decided this small knife would be more than enough for her. The guard questioned her choice, but she preferred what she was used to. The announcer began to introduce her opponents for the day's match. She stood ready, waiting to see who she would be fighting. A heavy gate on the far side of the arena began to open. From the shadows, a single, menacing figure emerged onto the sand. He was not alone. A whole horde of hardened criminals followed him. The number of opponents kept climbing, far beyond any expectation. In the stands, spectators were shocked by the sheer number of men. Others in the crowd knew the truth was far worse than it seemed. One man simply told the others to quiet down and watch. The stream of men emerging from the gate seemed to be endless. More and more criminals, each with a cruel look, joined the throng. The crowd's initial shock turned to a collective, disbelieving gasp. The final count was 90 men, a gang known for countless atrocities. They were a notorious bandit troupe, recently captured by the Empire's army. The announcer presented them all, the infamous Red Scorpions. The odds were set, one girl against 90 hardened killers. High in his box, Griaz McDaniel laughed at the impossible spectacle. He savored the moment, recalling his promise to control her fate. With the stage set, the announcer prepared to start the match. Hikaru stood poised, her small knife held firmly at her side. One of the bandits laughed, confident in their overwhelming advantage. They couldn't believe their luck, killing one girl for a full pardon. One bandit made a vile suggestion to his comrades about her. She looked back at him, her expression completely unreadable. Her school uniform was a stark contrast to the arena's brutality. She calmly asked the entire horde if they had killed many people. A large bandit laughed, confirming that every last one of them had. The leader boasted of killing 30 men himself, a low estimate. A chilling smile touched her lips as she told them that was good. The boastful leader lunged forward, eager to be the first to attack. In an instant, his outstretched hand was severed at the wrist. He stared at his bloody stump, his mind failing to comprehend. An instant later, he felt the cold steel buried in his chest. She was already behind him, driving the knife through his heart. The blade burst from his chest in a gruesome spray of blood. Life faded from his eyes as she ripped the blade free. With a swift kick, she sent his lifeless body to the ground. The other 89 bandits were frozen in horrified disbelief. One of them stammered, trying to convince himself it would be okay. Another bandit's head exploded as Hikaru's merciless assault began. She moved like a phantom, leaving a trail of corpses in her wake. She stood over her latest victim, already seeking her next target. A strange thought crossed her mind in the midst of the slaughter. She wondered if this was her first time killing, feeling no remorse. This cold detachment, she realized, was the key to her talent. The remaining bandits stared at her, no longer seeing a girl. But even as she fought, a single thought of the future emerged. She looked at her bloody hand, wondering if a normal life was possible. A bandit charged from behind, hoping to catch her distracted. She dismissed her worries. For now, this bloody work was fine. She tilted her head, the attack missing her by a hair's breadth. She moved through the battlefield, a whirlwind of death and destruction. The crowd erupted, their bloodlust stoked by the one-sided slaughter. From his perch, Adam Falkenborg watched with grim satisfaction. He knew McDaniel had made a foolish choice, giving her live training. This battle, he realized, was forging the girl into something more. With this display, she had officially become a true slayer. A predatory grin spread across his face. She was one of them now. For Griaz McDaniel, Falkenborg knew the sleepless nights had just begun. The few bandits who remained were paralyzed by absolute terror. In this brutal world, the girl was fully awakening her talent. She moved with lethal efficiency, cutting down another screaming man. Her eyes were sharp, calculating every move with cold precision. In her old life, she had no special skills or talents. In physical education, her performance had always been below average. But here, her body moved with a purpose she'd never known. The number of remaining opponents continued to dwindle rapidly. Even when she studied hard, her academic results were mediocre. She struck with inhuman precision, finding every vital point. The horde of 90 was quickly being reduced to nothing. The remaining men screamed in desperation, trying to surround her. But she remained calm, her mind a cold engine of tactical thought. One bandit could only cower, shielding his face in utter terror. Another summoned his courage for one last desperate attack. She moved like a phantom between their clumsy, panicked strikes. Only in the act of killing could her body move as she willed. The men could only scream in agony as she cut them down. In their panic, the bandits were becoming a danger to each other. She knew that only 4 could effectively attack her at once. Any more than that, and they would only hinder one another. Whether facing 100 or 1,000, she just had to maintain a 4-on-1 fight. Her enemies could only grit their teeth in helpless frustration. He turned in shock, finding her suddenly behind him. To her terrified opponents, she had become a demon of slaughter. The last of them could only scream, tears of terror on his face. Her movements are like a master's, a blur of motion ending in a fatal blow. The kill count drops to 72, a stark number painted in blood. Her uncanny movements seem to predict the future, leaving her foes in shocked agony. Another life is extinguished, bringing the total number of slain to 89. She pushes past the absolute limits of human reflexes, a predator in her element. 64 men have now fallen to her single, deadly blade. The crowd can only stare in stunned silence, their faces masks of disbelief. Primal fear grips the remaining bandits, their courage completely shattered by the massacre. She is a whirlwind of death, weaving through attacks and delivering fatal strikes. His final moments are a silent, ink-black scream of pure terror and pain. His eyes are wide with the sudden, horrifying realization that his life is over. Her gaze remains utterly cold, a focused point of death in the chaos. He explains that in this world, some people are simply born different. Some are born with impossible speed, beings who defy normal human limits. Others possess minds capable of calculations far beyond the grasp of ordinary men. And some are born specialized for one purpose, to kill their opponent. These anomalies, these specialists in slaughter, are simply born into the world. The last bandit, the leader, surrenders, admitting he has no chance of victory. He desperately reaches out, begging her to spare his life. His pleas dissolve into a raw, guttural scream of absolute terror. She asks if he is the one who commanded his subordinates to their doom. She looms over him, contemplating how she should use this broken man. A moment of quiet contemplation crosses her blood-stained face. Suddenly, her thoughts are interrupted by a startling vision. She sees a nightmarish gate of souls, a threshold of absolute damnation. Her eyes widen, realizing the true nature of this horrifying vision. This is the one door that must never be opened, lest she be lost forever. She looks down at her prey with a new, terrifying understanding of herself. The leader looks up, confused by her sudden hesitation, a flicker of hope rising. In a flash, the moment of decision passes. With cold efficiency, she slits his throat, ending his life without cruelty. From the stands, Adam Falkenborg nods in approval, murmuring his satisfaction. She stands over the final corpse, her work now complete. Her face is calm as she acknowledges that the battle is finally over. McDaniel's eyes are wide with disbelief and sweat. Only 9 left? He screams in his private box, unable to comprehend how she is so close to freedom. He glares down at the lone girl, standing amidst the carnage he orchestrated. She stands alone on the blood-soaked sand, a solitary figure of victory. She senses a malevolent gaze upon her from the owner's box above. A spectral horror, born of his own fear, suddenly clutches him from behind. He is paralyzed, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. An attendant, seeing his master's distress, cautiously approaches him. From the shadows, McDaniel gives a desperate, whispered order to summon them. He grits his teeth, resolving to summon the Colosseum's most dangerous fighters. He erupts, screaming for the professional gladiators to be brought forth at once. The attendant freezes, shocked by the gravity of his master's command. There are 2 types of fighters, slaves forced to bet their lives, and the professional gladiators who fight for their own dark reasons. These are willing killers, scoundrels who participate for fame and fortune. A woman with glasses finds it unusual for the miserly McDaniel to summon them. A hooded figure remarks on McDaniel's greed, a sin against their god. Another, more mysterious figure remains silent, their thoughts hidden. Adam Falkenborg simply chuckles, enjoying the unfolding drama. The great mage, Ramiel Vislard, steps into the light. The immortal saint, Jean Marigold, stands with serene composure. A mysterious figure remains completely shrouded in a dark, heavy cloak. The strongest gladiator in history, Adam Falkenborg, exudes raw power. The champions of the arena assemble before their trembling master. McDaniel looks upon his monstrous champions with a nervous sweat. Adam eagerly volunteers, a predatory grin spreading across his face. McDaniel furiously shouts him down, telling him he was not summoned. The pressure of the situation is clearly weighing heavily on him. Ramiel notes that if Adam were to fight, the arena itself would be destroyed. McDaniel listens, his face a portrait of anxious indecision. Adam crosses his arms, waiting for the inevitable conclusion. Ramiel adjusts his glasses, preparing to make his offer. He steps forward, a ball of dark flame in hand, and volunteers for the fight. He calls Hikaru a fascinating specimen, but dismisses her as a mere novelty. He states with absolute certainty that she has no possible way of defeating him. A wave of relief washes over McDaniel as he realizes the solution. He understands now. There is simply no reason for a mage to lose. His fear turns to manic glee as he wonders why he ever worried. He laughs wildly, telling Hikaru to enjoy her fate, a creature without magic. He screams, damning her as nothing more than an inferior being. His unhinged laughter echoes as Ramiel stands ready to be his instrument. Ramiel watches his master's breakdown with a cool, malicious smile. After her first murders, the girl walks into a new, starkly white life. She lets out a weary sigh, the weight of the day settling upon her. Back in an underground cell, she dislikes the hardness of her new bed. The guard informs her that this new, slightly better room is now hers. He explains that 50 wins earns a luxurious room. She is not impressed. The guard still flinches at her slightest movement, his fear palpable. She wonders why he is so wary. Killing him would mean her own death. But there are more important things to consider now. She turns her head slightly, offering a simple word of thanks to the guard. The guard is left stunned as the heavy door slams shut behind her. He lets out a shaky breath, finally allowing himself to relax. Alone in her cell, she sits on the bed and sighs, finally at rest. A sudden voice from the next room startles her from her thoughts. She hears a cheerful voice from the wall, introducing herself as Felicia Miltiz. Felicia offers a bright smile, saying it is a pleasure to meet her. Hikaru remains guarded, unsure how to react to this sudden friendliness. She cautiously introduces herself, noting that they cannot see each other. The sudden silence from the other side leaves her feeling confused. With a deafening crash, the stone wall beside her suddenly explodes inward. A single, powerful fist has punched clean through the solid stone. An excited eye peeks through the newly made hole in the wall. Felicia, a cat girl, beams, excited to find another survivor her own age. She shoves her arm through the hole, insisting that they become friends. Hikaru can only stare at the hand offered in friendship, utterly bewildered. A voice from the next cell warns her not to get too friendly. He explains they might be forced to kill each other someday. The man speaks with the grim certainty of painful experience. Hikaru recognizes the voice of the prince from the tragic duel. She recalls the memory of him grieving over his slain fiancée. In his cell, he drives his sword into the floor in anguish. Felicia concedes the grim point, though she finds it unpleasant. Hikaru coldly states she has no intention of making friends here. A diagram shows the 3 gladiators are neighbors in their cells. Albert looks at her intently, acknowledging her magnificent fighting prowess. He remarks it is rare for someone from a lower world to survive. Hikaru is left confused and unsettled by the strange term he used. She realizes she has heard the phrase several times since arriving. She finally asks him directly what a lower world actually means. Albert apologizes for his bluntness before beginning his explanation. He reveals that a lower world is simply a world without magic. The Empire summons people from such world for slavery and experimentation. The horrifying, systematic truth of her situation begins to sink in. The scene shifts to a grand, opulent estate far from the cells. This is the sprawling and modern mansion of the mage, Ramiel Vislard. An attendant reports that Ramiel's match against Hikaru is set. A cruel, knowing smile plays on the hooded mage's lips. He coolly acknowledges the report from his very nervous subordinate. The attendant trembles, thinking of the mage's monstrous reputation. Ramiel reveals his youthful physique, boasting he is over 80 years old. He sips his morning coffee, a perfect picture of sculpted health. He offers his subordinate a cup, touting its health benefits. A glint of light catches his glasses as he smiles knowingly. He poses a philosophical question about the true secret to health. The nervous attendant guesses it must be an early-to-bed lifestyle. Ramiel chuckles, confirming that his guess is not entirely wrong. He elaborates that good lifestyle habits are indeed indispensable. This includes a strict routine of moderate physical exercise. He also adheres to a carefully planned and controlled diet, and he makes sure to never overwork his mind or body. But he reveals that these simple habits are not nearly enough. He explains that humans have been hunters since ancient times. For civilized people like them, a wild stimulus is necessary. He beckons the attendant to follow him to see the final pieces. The attendant looks on in disbelief and growing horror. He reveals his captives, 3 girls, chained and gagged in a dark room. These, he explains, are from the whole to the lower world. One of the girls whimpers, her eyes wide with unspeakable terror. The attendant recognizes her as one of Hikaru's school bullies. The mage makes a swift, dismissive gesture with his hand. A blade of dark energy kills the attendant for being noisy. Ramiel's face is a mask of cold, irritated displeasure. He describes his depraved ritual of hunting, lust, and feasting. At this time, he casts aside all restraint and indulges himself. This, he proclaims, is the true essence of maintaining his youth. His new subordinate can only stare in silent, abject terror. The man finally understands why Ramiel fights in the arena. He can only manage a quiet, terrified affirmation. Ramiel smiles, buttoning his shirt, stating it is all for his health. The Colosseum provides a wild stimulus he cannot get elsewhere. His thoughts now turn to his next match against the new girl. He believes she will provide a wonderful new stimulus for his cells. In the cell, Felicia declares that today's bread is delicious. She holds up her meager food with a bright, shining smile. The 3 gladiators exist in their separate, bleak realities. Hikaru finds the bread gritty, wondering about this world's standards. Albert confirms the bread is just bad, but Felicia remains optimistic. A guard arrives to escort them to the viewing area. Albert explains the privilege is granted to those with 50 wins. They are allowed to observe the other matches from a high balcony. The 2 stand side by side, looking down into the vast arena. They watch with grim expressions, the crowd's roar echoing around them. The announcer's voice booms, introducing a professional gladiator. The spectators erupt in a unified frenzy of excitement. A lone figure strides confidently onto the blood-soaked sand. The crowd chants the name of the great mage, Ramiel Vislard. He looks utterly composed, a master in his own element. He notes his lack of sleep, seeing this match as a tune-up. Albert mutters that Ramiel is nothing more than a sadistic bastard. She wonders aloud if he would be a good opponent for her. Albert reveals that Ramiel is, in fact, her next opponent. The news lands with the force of a physical blow to them both. Her gaze immediately shifts upward toward the owner's private box. McDaniel watches her, a cruel, triumphant smirk on his face. She understands the owner is enjoying her despair from afar. Her face sets into a mask of cold, unshakable resolve. The announcer calls for Ramiel's opponents to be brought forth. 3 shadowy figures are pushed out into the bright arena. Their bare feet step hesitantly onto the sandy floor. Hikaru's eyes widen as she recognizes the newcomers. It is her former bullies, Mizuochi and her 2 friends. Albert, noticing her reaction, asks if she knows them. She can only manage a quiet, stunned affirmation. She explains to him that they were her tormentors back home. Albert is shocked, calling them unwitting suicide volunteers. Ramiel cruelly remarks on their unsuitability for his private purposes. He decided to use them for this public spectacle instead. Mizuochi furiously demands to know what he thinks of human life. He looks down on them, questioning the value of their lives. He dismisses them as mere supplements for his own well-being. His words leave the girls speechless with horror and disgust. He then offers them a handicap out of mock generosity. A heavy wooden cart is wheeled onto the arena floor. It is laden with an entire arsenal of deadly weapons. Mizuochi looks at the weapons, a sliver of desperate hope appearing. A young woman, clad in only a bikini and cape, looks up in surprise. Ramiel declares that for 10 minutes, he will neither move nor retaliate. He condescendingly invites the girls to use the weapons he has provided. Mizuochi and her friends stare in stunned disbelief at his audacious offer. The announcer's voice booms across the vast arena, signaling the battle's start. One girl panics, while another frets over the idea of attacking a person. Mizuochi's heart pounds with terror as she desperately grips a heavy crossbow. Ramiel calmly notes that 9 minutes and 30 seconds remain for their attack. Mizuochi grits her teeth, her fear hardening into a desperate, feral resolve. She screams that she must kill him, otherwise she will be the one killed. The crossbow fires with a brilliant flash, sending a bolt hurtling forward. The projectile flies true, aimed directly at the center of Ramiel's forehead. It appears to make a direct, explosive impact right between his eyes. Mizuochi lets out a short, triumphant laugh, believing she has succeeded. Her victory is cut short as she stares, utterly shocked by what she sees. Ramiel stands completely unharmed, a ghost of a smile on his face. The bolt hovers before his forehead, held by an invisible force, shocking Mizuochi. The projectile clatters harmlessly to the sandy ground before him. Ramiel chuckles, musing that she must have been a bully in her world. He condescendingly asks if she was a tormentor in her former life. A translucent, crackling barrier of pure magic now surrounds the confident mage. From her balcony, Hikaru realizes that a world with orcs must also have magic. Ramiel explains that in this world, there is such a thing as magic combat. Hikaru grimly acknowledges that, of course, magic would exist in this world. The text notes the girls are shaken by this extraordinary display of power. Ramiel calmly informs them that only 8 minutes remain for their futile assault. Mizuochi and her companion look on, their faces now filled with growing dread. He taunts them, suggesting they think carefully about how they wish to hunt him. He cheerfully lists the many ways magic can kill, from slicing to electrocution. The 3 girls are paralyzed with absolute terror at his monstrous words. Mizuochi snaps out of her fear, screaming that they are out of time. She charges forward, swinging an axe with desperate, futile strength. Another girl joins the assault, striking the barrier with a longsword. The 3rd girl hammers on the shimmering shield with her bare fists in panic. Their combined attacks are utterly useless against the crackling, magical barrier. The crowd in the stands roars with excitement at the one-sided spectacle. Mizuochi falls back, exhausted and desperate from the useless assault. Her companion also recoils from the shield, her face a mask of hopeless terror. The 3rd girl collapses to the ground, utterly defeated by the impenetrable barrier. They can only stare at Ramiel, who remains perfectly still and untouched. The girls pant, their energy spent and their hope rapidly fading away. Ramiel asks if they are done, noting that their time is almost up. Mizuochi's eyes fall upon the weapon card, refusing to give up just yet. She shoves her friends aside, screaming for them to get out of the way. With a final surge of adrenaline, she hefts a massive, crude hand cannon. Ramiel notes with mild interest that she has figured out how to load it. Mizuochi's face is a mask of pure desperation, her sanity fraying. She screams for him to die as she fires the cannon with all her might. After the massive explosion, she wonders if she finally got him. Her fleeting hope turns to absolute shock as the smoke begins to clear. Ramiel stands completely unscathed, brushing dust from his shoulder. He smiles slightly, announcing that their time is now up. With a casual snap of his fingers, he finally unleashes his own magic. The three girls are suddenly and violently engulfed in a torrent of magical flames. One of them screams in unimaginable agony as she is burned alive. Ramiel calmly states that he has decided to execute them by immolation. He calls it a traditional punishment, their torment reflected in his glasses. A charred figure gurgles in pain, its form barely recognizable as human. The smoldering corpse crawls forward through a pool of its own remains. The dying creature reaches for Ramiel's leg, whispering for him to help. Its blackened face is a horrifying mask of pain and desperation. Ramiel looks down at the pathetic, burning creature with cold disinterest. He raises his heavy black boot directly over its scorched head. He crushes its skull, declaring that of course he won't offer any help. Hikaru watches the brutal execution from the balcony, her face impassive. Ramiel allows himself a small, self-satisfied smile after the effortless kill. The announcer's voice booms across the arena, declaring the match is over. Ramiel walks away from the pyre, musing that dinner will be delicious. Gria's McDaniel laughs maniacally, pointing and declaring it is Hikaru's turn. Albert stands beside Hikaru, sweating nervously at the terrifying announcement. Hikaru asks if everyone in this world can use magic so powerfully. Albert explains his own magic is limited to minor enhancements and simple attacks. He reveals Ramiel is one of only 8 special grade mages in the world. Hikaru processes this grim information, her expression hardening as she understands. Albert tells her that her fighting style is in a different league entirely, but he insists she has no way to penetrate Ramiel's magic barrier. He concludes that she will be killed without a single doubt. Hikaru remains silent, her face shadowed and her dark thoughts hidden. Albert looks at her, his eyes filled with genuine concern and fear. She reflects that they were bullies, but she never wished them dead. Her eyes narrow with a dark, simmering intensity as she turns away. A palpable, black aura of killing intent begins to emanate from her. Her eyes shown in extreme close-up, burning with cold, murderous resolve. A monstrous, skeletal specter manifests behind her as she vows to win. Albert recoils, his mind reeling from the sheer force of her killing intent. He stares, aghast, at the source of this overwhelming murderous aura. He swallows hard, beads of sweat running down his face in terror. The Colosseum stands tall, awaiting the next brutal and bloody match. The crowd roars with bloodlust, hungry for more violence and spectacle. The text announces that it is now the day of the fated match. Hikaru enters the arena, her expression cold and utterly determined. Ramiel stands opposite her, his confidence absolute and unwavering. The announcer declares the start of the much-anticipated fight to the death. The loudspeakers blare, announcing the start of today's main event. The matchup is announced: the great mage, Ramiel Vislard, versus the girl from the lower world, Kirishima Hikaru. A bookie announces the odds, his colleague looking on in disbelief. The odds are shown: Ramiel at 0.006, Hikaru at a staggering 6,000. The match is officially declared a no contest due to the disparity. The bookmakers declare they won't take bets. Certain Hikaru cannot possibly win. Albert grimly recalls the horror of the previous day's brutal match. He turns to Hikaru, quietly asking if she's going to be all right. Felicia appears in chains, defiantly shouting her faith in Hikaru's victory. Hikaru acknowledges their friendship, but notes it is still a deadly match. Albert questions this, but Felicia insists that her belief makes them friends. He is taken aback by her simple conviction, quietly accepting her loyalty. In the arena, Ramiel notes that Hikaru seems to be quite popular. He sneers, adding that everyone has simply come to watch her die. Hikaru asks him if he feels anything for the people he kills. Ramiel looks at her, momentarily surprised by her direct question. She clarifies, asking if he feels guilt for killing her former classmates. He looks away for a moment, considering his response. His finger touches his glasses as he ponders her question about guilt. He closes his eyes with a faint, condescending smile on his face. Spreading his hands, he declares that he feels absolutely nothing at all. Hikaru's eye narrows, her gaze fixed on a monster before her. He explains that he fights for his health. She is merely a supplement. He insists he is not a pervert, comparing killing to taking a vitamin. She remains silent, her expression cold and unreadable under his tirade. Ramiel adjusts his glasses, his cruel smile widening with anticipation. He taunts her, remarking that yesterday's hunt was quite good. He graphically recalls roasting the girls before indulging in sex and food. He describes the 30-year-old wine, comparing it to a mature woman. His gaze then returns to Hikaru, his target in the present. He suggests they could just have sex now, given her nice figure. Her eyes snap wide, blazing with a sudden and terrifying killing intent. Ramiel's face hardens as he formally announces the hunt will begin. With a sharp crack, he snaps his fingers to unleash his magic. Hikaru's eyes widen slightly, anticipating the imminent, fiery attack. A massive fireball erupts, engulfing the space where she just stood. She has already moved, landing safely as the inferno rages behind her. Her gaze remains locked on him, her mind cold and analytical. Ramiel praises her, noting her reaction speed is at the human limit. He raises his hand, forming a gun shape as magical energy gathers. He asks how she will handle his next spell, the ice revolver. His face is a mask of arrogance as he names his deadly attack. He explains it fires hardened ice bullets at -70 degrees. Furthermore, he boasts their launch velocity is equal to a real bullet. With a sadistic grin, he unleashes a single, supersonic projectile. Hikaru leans her head aside, the ice bullet screaming past her face. The bullet shatters against the wall as Ramiel watches in surprise. She glares back at him, her intense focus completely unbroken. He is delighted by her skill, exclaiming that it was wonderful. He asks her how it is possible for her to dodge a bullet. She begins to explain that the principle behind it is quite simple. By watching his eyes and muscles, she can predict and evade his attacks. Ramiel, genuinely amused by her talent, declares that this is interesting. He asks what she will do if he fires all 6 shots at once. 6 deadly ice bullets instantly form around his waiting fingertips. His eyes narrow with excitement, eager to test her incredible ability. He unleashes a chaotic volley of all 6 ice bullets simultaneously. Hikaru charges forward, her knife held ready to meet the deadly storm. She weaves through the barrage, deflecting the bullets with her small blade. Her eyes are a blur of concentration amidst the storm of ice. She emerges from the attack unscathed, right before his magical barrier. Ramiel begins to slowly and deliberately applaud her impossible feat. He praises her again, calling her performance truly magnificent and wonderful. From the balcony, a hopeful Felicia asks if they are evenly matched. Her eyes are wide with a mixture of shock and dawning belief. Hikaru stands ready, wiping a single drop of blood from her cheek. Albert grimly notes the barrier is the real problem, wondering her plan. Ramiel smirks, his teeth showing like a predator's, utterly confident. Hikaru assesses the situation, her first wound, with victory looking hopeless. The wide arena shot emphasizes the absolute defense of his magic. The diverse, bloodthirsty crowd watches the spectacle with rapt attention. On the viewing balcony, Albert and Felicia look on, deeply concerned. In another box, Falkenborg and the other professionals watch intently. From his private box, Griaz McDaniel watches with a cruel, knowing grin. He turns to a guard, asking if he has ever played chess. The guard, sweating, confirms he has, being of noble birth. McDaniel, holding his wine, asks if he knows the guaranteed winning strategy. The guard nervously admits that he has never heard of such a thing. McDaniel leans in, stating that the answer is actually quite simple. He suddenly grabs the guard's spear with a powerful grip. With a sharp crack, he snaps the thick wooden shaft in two. The guard's eye widens in a silent scream of pure terror. McDaniel presses the jagged point to his throat, explaining the strategy. The terrified guard can only beg for his life, pleading with his master. A single, dark drop of blood wells up from the guard's neck. McDaniel's eye glares as he explains his point about impenetrable attacks. He concludes that this means, no matter what, he cannot possibly lose. In the arena, Hikaru knows she cannot break the barrier with force. She considers waiting for a momentary opening in his defense to attack. Ramiel taunts her, saying she shouldn't hope for the barrier to expire. Hikaru's eyes show a flicker of surprise. He has read her thoughts. He boasts that his magic recovers far faster than the barrier consumes it. He condescendingly asks if she finds his permanent barrier convenient. High above, McDaniel erupts in a fit of crazed, triumphant laughter. Ramiel continues, saying there is no hope of the barrier vanishing. To prove his point, he produces a large, ornate coin. With a flick of his thumb, he sends the coin spinning. The coin flies through the air, heading straight for his shield. It passes through the magical barrier without disturbing it in the slightest. The coin lands on the sand outside the shield with a faint clink. He explains this is a combination of different kinds of magic. A diagram shows how he can cast and teleport spells outside his shield. He concludes that she has no opening. She is already checkmated. Hikaru watches him, her expression grim, but her will unwavering. Ramiel begins to gather crackling electricity in his hand for another attack. Hikaru's eyes narrow, her body tensing to face the next impossible assault. Ramiel unleashes a bolt of pure lightning, but Hikaru has already vanished. He marvels that she dodged lightspeed magic, recognizing her unique talent for slaughter. From the stands, Adam Falkenborg watches the battle with a grim, knowing expression. Her eyes narrow in intense focus, her mind predicting his next deadly assault. Ramiel remains untouchable, calmly observing her from behind his impenetrable magic barrier. He muses that while her reflexes are incredible, her muscle power isn't truly superhuman. He declares she has no hope of winning, but begs her to struggle more. She thinks that for a true hunt, hiding inside a barrier is just cowardly. With a defiant stomp, she plants her foot firmly into the arena's sand. She rejects his entire premise, declaring that his twisted philosophy is simply wrong. He explains his hunt, using overwhelming force, like a gun, for pure entertainment. The prey and hunter are not equals. He must always remain absolutely superior. Hikaru listens to his monstrous creed, her face a mask of cold, stony silence. She sidesteps another attack with impossible speed, the distance between them still vast. He observes her with a condescending look, noting how remarkably persistent she is. Deciding to escalate the hunt, he wonders how she will handle his next spell. A malevolent, dark energy begins to coalesce in the palm of his hand. He unleashes his attack, a drifting black sphere he proudly calls Hellfire. The dark orb floats ominously across the arena floor, slowly closing in on Hikaru. She watches its deliberate approach, her eyes calculating its trajectory and nature. She notes its lack of speed and dodges, but it detonates beside her. The sphere erupts in a massive, ground-shaking explosion of pure, dark energy. A close-up on her eye reveals a flicker of pain and dawning understanding. Ramiel calmly explains the nature of his attack to his already doomed opponent. The powerful shockwave from the blast scorches her arm, drawing first blood. The full force of the hellfire detonation rocks the entire Colosseum structure. Her face contorts in a silent grimace of pain from the searing burn. Despite the fresh injury, she lands firmly on her feet, ready for more. She takes a low stance with her knife at the ready, her injured arm smoking. Looking at her scorched flesh, she curses the unavoidable area of effect damage. He boasts that it's a spell that scorches everything within a 10-meter radius. He calls her more persistent than any beast he has ever hunted before. Her eyes widen as dozens more of the black spheres materialize around her. She glares at the distant mage, understanding the inescapable trap he is setting. The spheres surround her as he announces his intent to attack the entire arena. He reminds her that even as Ash, he will still make use of her remains. Albert watches in horror from the balcony, knowing there is no escape for her. As the spheres converge, Albert cries out, certain she is completely trapped. Her face is a mask of pure determination as the walls of death close in. A cataclysmic explosion consumes the arena floor in a blinding flash of darkness. Smoke and debris wash over the stunned crowd as the entire Colosseum shakes. Grias McDaniel clenches his fists in triumph, declaring that the match is over. His triumphant expression instantly melts into one of slack-jawed disbelief. The spectators stare in stunned silence, their faces etched with utter shock. Through the thick, swirling smoke, a figure begins to emerge from the blast. The silhouette becomes clearer as the heavy smoke slowly begins to settle. It is Hikaru, battered and scorched, but impossibly, she is still standing. She bursts from the inferno, charging directly at a stunned and confused Ramiel. He can't believe it, stammering that she charged right into the blast center. She had gambled on a single principle: the eye of a typhoon is safe. He understands her logic, but knows no ordinary person could make that judgment. She closes the distance, a blur of motion against the sandy arena floor. Her expression is one of pure, unwavering focus on her singular, distant target. Ramiel can only watch as she sprints across the sand toward his position. He realizes that talent for slaughter is even more astonishing than he thought. For the sake of killing, she can achieve anything that is physically possible. She glares, thinking of the terrible power he had used on her former bullies. Her eye reflects a cold, hard promise of the violence she will unleash. He reminds himself that a beast from a lower world cannot possibly use magic. In a panic, he conjures a massive ice wall to block her charge. He creates a fortress of ice and magic, boasting of its instant kill power. The black spheres of hellfire now orbit his newly created crystal prison. Shaken by her adaptability, he is still certain that he will win this time. Felicia screams encouragement, insisting that Hikaru-chan will emerge victorious. McDaniel scoffs, demanding to know the basis for her baseless confidence. She proudly declares her belief is founded on a maiden's powerful intuition. Facing the fortress, she knows this is a desperate, inescapable situation. She closes her eyes, and a strange, profound sense of calm washes over her. She takes a deep, steadying breath, her mind becoming perfectly clear and sharp. Her eyes snap open, no longer filled with desperation, but with cold certainty. She whispers to herself, a faint smile on her lips, "I think I can win." Falkenborg watches this turn of events, a flicker of keen interest in his eyes. Grias McDaniel stares, utterly baffled by her impossible, quiet confidence. Ramiel, safe in his fortress, is equally stunned by her sudden declaration. He taunts her, asking if the terror of her situation has finally broken her mind. "Then die," he screams, sending the orbiting spheres of hellfire to attack her. With evasion and defense both impossible, only one desperate path remains for her. She prepares to intercept, a move Ramiel considers to be utter, suicidal madness. Her eyes narrow in focus. She has found the trick the single key to victory. Her mind becomes a mantra, thin to the absolute limit, make it thinner. Albert screams a warning, certain that intercepting the spheres means instant death. The first black sphere of roiling energy closes in on her final position. Her eyes a pinpoint of focus, seeing not an explosion, but a target. The edge of her simple knife glints, a sliver of light against the darkness. In a flash of impossible speed, her blade passes cleanly through the sphere. Ramiel's face is a mask of disbelief. Impossible? He stammers in shock. McDaniel can only stare, his mouth agape, unable to process what he's seen. A slow, intrigued smile spreads across Adam Falkenborg's face as he watches. The sphere detonates, but the explosion is thrown off-center by her impossible slice. He realizes she didn't stop the blast. She merely displaced its detonation point. In the chaos, a narrow safe zone is born, and she stands within it. He stares into the swirling smoke, his perfect trap now utterly broken. She uses the very shockwave of the blast to propel herself forward. A bead of sweat runs down his face as she closes the distance. She crashes into his ice fortress with the force of cannonball. He thinks he is still safe, that his barrier cannot be breached by her. But a strange, alien resonance travels from the point of impact through him. He sees her knife is glowing, faintly imbued with a trace of magical energy. Her eyes burn with a cold, focused fury as she presses her assault. His face contorts in terror as he chokes out a single, desperate question. Why? Hikaru's eye widens with a chilling realization. She has finally memorized his every move. Ramiel's eyes reflect pure, stunned disbelief, his perfect composure finally and utterly shattered. At last, her murderous will finds its mark, turning the hunt into a fair slaughter.